Vanessa, you drove here yesterday. My sister froze beside the open suitcase, tears streaking her makeup. Less than 2 hours before my wedding, I stood in the bridal suite wearing a silk robe while Vanessa sobbed that the airline had lost the bridesmaid dress she needed for the ceremony. I mean, the garment bag, she stammered. I left it with Chloe and she flew in this morning. Sandra, please, I'm already humiliated. Before I could question her again, Mom stepped between us. Sandra, it's one dress. Stop making your sister feel worse. Then Vanessa looked at the wedding gown hanging beside me, the gown that had belonged to our grandmother before I spent months having it redesigned. Just let me try yours on for 10 minutes, she pleaded. I need to see the shape so the seamstress can copy it. No. Mom's expression hardened. On your wedding day, you're really going to be this selfish. That word did what it had always done. For 29 years, keeping peace in our family usually meant I gave something up, and Vanessa got what she wanted. So I handed her my wedding dress. 20 minutes later, both Vanessa and the gown were gone. I called her 6 times. No answer. Dad barely looked up when I found him outside the suite. She's probably fixing the problem herself, he said. Stop panicking. My wedding starts in an hour. And somehow, everything always becomes about you. I stared at him on my wedding day. There was no time to argue. I pulled on the simple ivory dress I had packed for the reception and hurried through the hotel toward the ceremony hall. Then I heard applause. Not nervous chatter. Applause. I slowed outside the closed doors. Daniel's voice came through the microphone. Sometimes the person you're supposed to marry has been standing beside you all along. My hand closed around the door handle. I pushed. Every face turned toward me. And at my altar, wearing my grandmother's wedding dress, stood Vanessa. My fiancé, Daniel, was holding both her hands. Mom and Dad were in the front row. Clapping. Vanessa looked straight at me and whispered something to Daniel. He squeezed her hands as if I were the intruder. Then I noticed one person who wasn't applauding. Daniel's older brother, Marcus. He wasn't looking at Daniel. He was staring at Vanessa, completely pale. And somehow, Marcus looked even more terrified than the man who had just stolen my wedding. Why? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears the moment she saw me standing at the back of the ceremony hall. For one stupid second, I thought she was ashamed. Then she turned toward the guests. I know how this looks, she said, gripping Daniel's hand. But Daniel and I have been in love for years. A murmur moved through the room. Daniel nodded beside her. We tried to ignore it. We didn't want to hurt Sandra. I almost laughed. They were standing at my altar, in front of my guests, with Vanessa wearing my wedding dress. And somehow they were telling the room they had done all of this to protect me. Mom walked straight to Vanessa and wrapped her arms around her. You finally chose your happiness, she whispered loudly enough for me to hear. That was when I understood what they were doing. They weren't just betraying me. They were rewriting the story before I could speak. I looked at Daniel, outside now. He hesitated, then followed me into the side corridor. I didn't yell. I asked one question. When did this start? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. About 8 months ago. 8 months. Something shifted in my head. 3 weeks earlier, Vanessa had left her phone unlocked on my kitchen counter. A message had flashed across the screen from someone saved only as **M***. Last night can never happen again. I had assumed she was hiding some random boyfriend. But seconds after I saw it, Marcus had walked into the kitchen. Vanessa had snatched up the phone so fast, she nearly knocked over a glass. Back then, I hadn't connected it. Now I did. I found Vanessa near the bridal suite and shut the door behind us. Who is M? Her expression changed instantly. What? The person who texted you 3 weeks ago. She stopped crying. I stepped closer. Was it Marcus? Vanessa grabbed my wrist. What exactly did you see? I pulled free. For the first time all day, she wasn't talking about Daniel. I turned toward the door. Vanessa rushed past me, locked it, and stood with her back against it. Then she said, very quietly, "Whatever you think you know about Marcus, you cannot tell Daniel." When I walked back toward the reception area, I heard my father telling our relatives a version of my relationship I barely recognized. Sandra and Daniel had been having problems for months, he said. This is painful, but everyone needs to respect Daniel and Vanessa's decision. I stopped. What problems? Dad turned around. Mom immediately looked away. That was enough. You knew. Dad lowered his voice. Sandra not here. You knew before I walked into that ceremony. Mom stepped closer. Vanessa told us about Daniel. She begged us not to ruin the moment. My stomach dropped. They hadn't known she would steal my dress, but they had known my wedding wasn't going ahead. And they had let me get ready anyway. I didn't argue. I walked straight to the venue coordinator. Stop every service that hasn't already been provided. She blinked. Sandra. The contracts are in my name. Cancel the remaining reception services. Within minutes, the champagne service stopped. Staff began closing down the elaborate evening setup I had paid for. Vanessa stormed across the room. You're seriously punishing everyone because Daniel chose true love. Relatives turned toward us. I looked at her. Then true love can pay its own bill. Someone behind Vanessa asked, if you two planned this, why did you need Sandra's dress? Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then Marcus quietly headed for the exit. Vanessa saw him. The panic on her face was immediate. She hurried toward a private preparation room. I followed. Before opening the door, I activated the voice recorder on my phone and slipped it into my hand. Vanessa spun around when I entered. Leave me alone. No. I closed the door. Then I asked the question she had been avoiding. Were you sleeping with Marcus too? Her face collapsed. Sandra. Were you? Please, she stepped toward me. You cannot tell Daniel it was complicated. Marcus meant nothing. She had just answered me without saying yes. I stared at the woman wearing my wedding dress. How long? Vanessa lowered her eyes. Vanessa, how long were you sleeping with his brother? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Longer than Daniel and me. I left the wedding without telling Daniel what Vanessa had admitted. That silence became Vanessa's protection. For the next week, she and Daniel posted carefully staged photographs together, the two of them holding hands, smiling at restaurants, presenting themselves as the couple who had finally found the courage to choose true love. My parents helped sell the same story. Mom told relatives, Sandra needs time to accept what happened. Dad went further. Give her space until she stops blaming everyone. I stopped listening. Instead, I started removing Daniel from my life. I contacted the vendors, confirmed which deposits were refundable, and removed his authorization from every wedding-related account we had shared. Then I verified something else. No marriage license involving Daniel and me had been filed. Whatever future I thought I was walking into that morning was officially over. 3 days later, Marcus called. Sandra, we need to talk. I nearly declined. Then I remembered his face at the ceremony. What happened between you and Vanessa? Silence. Finally, Marcus said, it lasted almost a year. I sat down. He admitted Vanessa had been secretly seeing him long before her relationship with Daniel began. She wanted me to leave my wife, Marcus said. I refused. I ended it shortly before the wedding. Suddenly, everything connected. Vanessa hadn't spent years secretly loving Daniel. She had pursued him more seriously after Marcus rejected her. Daniel thought Vanessa had finally chosen him over me. He didn't know he had been her second choice. Will you tell him? I asked. If Daniel asks me directly, I won't lie. I already had Vanessa's own admission recorded. Now I had confirmation. I preserved the original recording exactly as it was. No edits, no dramatic cuts. Then I texted Vanessa. Tell Daniel yourself before tonight. My phone immediately rang. Vanessa. I declined it. She called again. And again. By evening, I counted 17 missed calls. At exactly 8:03 p.m., I opened a group message containing Vanessa, Daniel, Mom, Dad, and Marcus. I attached the recording. Then I pressed send. Seconds later, Daniel's name appeared on my screen. I declined. The phone went silent. Then it rang again. This time, the name on the screen was Marcus. I answered Marcus. Before I could speak, he said, Daniel knows everything. I sat on the edge of my bed and said nothing. He called me after hearing the recording, Marcus continued. He asked me directly if Vanessa and I were sleeping together. And I told him the truth. Marcus admitted everything. The affair had lasted nearly a year. It overlapped with Vanessa's relationship with Daniel. Vanessa had repeatedly asked Marcus to leave his wife for her, and when he refused, he ended the affair shortly before my wedding. After that, Vanessa had pushed harder toward Daniel. Her story about secretly loving him for years hadn't been romantic. It had been convenient. And the recording I sent made it impossible for her to rewrite what happened. Her own voice could be heard begging me not to tell Daniel about Marcus. She begged me not to destroy everything. Worst of all for her, she begged me not to reveal that Marcus had been the man she originally wanted. The next confrontation happened at my parents' house. I wasn't there, but Marcus later told me exactly what happened. Daniel stood across from Vanessa while Mom and Dad watched. He asked her one question. If Marcus had agreed to leave his wife, would you have chosen me? Vanessa stared at him. Daniel, it wasn't like that. Then answer me. She couldn't. Daniel slowly removed the ring he had put on his finger after their ridiculous altar performance and placed it on the table. Mom immediately stepped in. She made a mistake. That doesn't mean what you two have isn't real. Daniel turned toward her. You applauded while she humiliated Sandra because you believed her story. Are you still applauding now? Mom went silent. Dad, the man who had called their betrayal destiny, walked out of the room. And just like that, the performance was over. Vanessa and Daniel had rushed through their ceremony without completing the required legal paperwork, so there was no valid marriage to dissolve. Daniel ended their relationship. Marcus told his wife the truth himself. He moved out temporarily while they decided what his betrayal meant for their marriage. I stayed out of it. That damage belonged to Marcus and Vanessa, not me. The fallout spread through our family quickly. Relatives who had watched my parents applaud at my wedding began contacting me. Some apologized for staying silent. Others admitted they had believed Dad when he claimed Daniel, and I had been having problems for months. I didn't need them to choose sides. I needed them to understand that I had never agreed to be sacrificed, so Vanessa could have her romantic spectacle. Financially, I recovered the wedding deposits that were still refundable because the contracts were in my name. And then Vanessa had to return one final thing. My dress. She sent it back through Mom. When I opened the garment bag, I stared at the gown that had belonged to my grandmother, the dress Vanessa had worn while taking my place at my own altar. For a moment, I considered throwing it away. I didn't. I had it professionally cleaned and stored. Vanessa had already taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let her decide what my grandmother's dress meant too. Daniel eventually sent me one final apology. He didn't blame Vanessa. He didn't ask for another chance. He admitted that whatever Vanessa had hidden from him changed nothing about what he had done to me. I accepted the apology. I did not accept him back. My parents learned something similar. I told them forgiveness, if it ever came completely, would not mean returning to the family we had been before. For years, keeping the peace had meant I surrendered something. Attention. Boundaries. My voice. Vanessa surrendered nothing. That ended at my wedding. Months later, I moved into a new apartment and rebuilt the savings I had nearly poured into a marriage that would have trapped me with a man capable of humiliating me publicly. I have no contact with Vanessa. My relationship with my parents is limited and entirely on my terms. Daniel is no longer part of my life. And Vanessa went from standing at my altar, while everyone applauded her supposed love story, to losing the man she stole from me when the truth about the other brother finally came out. She wore my wedding dress. She stood beside my fiancé. She let my parents call their betrayal destiny. But she couldn't make the truth disappear. Vanessa stole my wedding dress and tried to steal my future with it. But when the truth came out, I realized the future she took was the one I was better off never having.